Now we'll be talking about cyclones first, and then flood and drainage, and droughts and famines later. Now, in our unit on cyclones, we have discussed about the meaning and characteristic features of cyclones and the forecasting and warning system that we have in our country. And we have also spoken about the preparedness and risk reduction measures. So I will request Dr. Kulshrestha to first begin with the meaning and characteristics of cyclone.
Well, cyclone is one type of disaster that is quite important to us in India, because we have not one but two seasons of cyclones. Cyclones occur during what we call pre-monsoon season, that is in the months of April, May and June also, and also in the post-monsoon season, that is in the months of October and November, and sometimes in the early part of December as well. So we have not only one season but two seasons of cyclones. Second thing, cyclones, the various characteristics he enumerated, but to put it very succinctly, cyclone is a storm of sea origin. That is, it originates over the sea. It packs in a lot of heavy winds and heavy rain. It strikes the coast, creates devastation, brings in a lot of water. It's a rotating type of cyclone with a spiral banded structure. So this being of the sea origin, that is originating over the sea, and it so happens that India is a peninsula with sea on two sides, the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea, and of course Indian Ocean to the south. So these cyclones originate both in the Bay of Bengal and the Arabian Sea. The cyclones move generally towards west or northwest, which means that those cyclones that originate in the Bay of Bengal are likely to come or do come over some part of the eastern coast of India. Maybe if they travel westwards, they come to Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh coast. If they move northwestwards, they could go to Orissa and West Bengal coast. And those which originate in Arabian Sea, most of them move westwards and go away from the Indian territory, but some of them do recurve and go and hit either the northern parts of Maharashtra or Gujarat, particularly Gujarat this year. The viewers would recall that we had not only one but two cyclones hitting Gujarat this year, one before the monsoon and one was towards the later part of monsoon. So cyclones are something which we cannot escape in India. In fact, we have about 5 to 6 cyclones every year, spread between these two seasons of cyclones. And more cyclones originate in Bay of Bengal than in the Arabian Sea. The ratio is about 4:1. But this is over a long period, the average. This year we had 2 in the Arabian Sea and then hitting the Gujarat coast. Some rare occasions it happens that a cyclone originates in the Bay of Bengal, comes to eastern coast, does a lot of devastation, weakens when it is over the land, and again emerges in the Arabian Sea. Such cases have also been seen. So that's about the cyclone. Now coming to the question of predictability and the warning system for cyclones, I would like to emphasize that cyclone is one disaster which is very well predictable. The predictability in the case of cyclone is very high. Not only the predictability, but the concerned agencies, and we'll explain that, they resort to what is known as cyclone tracking. That is, cyclone, since the time it takes place, it originates, it generates in the sea, it is kept under track and its movement is followed. So not only that there is a predictability, there is a forecast, but there is a tracking also in real time, and combined together, it is capable to give is within our capacity to give the warning beforehand. The warnings in case of cyclone are generally given in 2 stages. The first is what is known as cyclone alert, which is generally given about 48 hours before bad weather, that is the rain and the winds, start in the particular area. And then about 24 hours before the likely arrival of cyclone at that place, a warning is given. Of course, the warning to the fishermen who venture out in the sea for their daily, that's their daily trade or whatever you like to say, vocation, that is fishing, that's given much earlier. They are advised not to venture in the sea when the cyclone is somewhere out in the sea. In order to predict the cyclone or to ensure its predictability, the Meteorological Department, the India Meteorological Department, IMD, that's the nodal agency. And they keep track of all the meteorological observations. But apart from that, two new tools that are come very handy. One is that the INSAT, our national satellite, INSAT watches a cyclone from about 36,000 kilometers up above in the space. That is, a cyclone is viewed from top, and that picture is available continuously almost. Second sat on the coastal areas, on the coasts, the Meteorological Department has established a chain of 10 high-power cyclone detection radars, 6 on the east coast and 4 on the west coast. And these are so arranged that they provide what is known as an overlapping surveillance. That is, a cyclone, when it starts moving towards the country from the sea, it is tracked by more than one radar. So you see a cyclone from below, you see a cyclone from above, you get the data continuously, you get other meteorological measurements from the entire area, pressure, temperature, humidity, wind speed, wind direction, plot them on the charts, and then do the forecast and keep the cyclone under track. Cyclone has certain very basic characteristics in the sense it never travels in a straight line. It goes in a zigzag type of fashion. Number two, its speed is not constant all along, that it moves say about 10-12 kilometers per hour. No, it seems to be moving, stalling, slowing, advancing, and like that. So it has to be kept always under track. Now the question comes, you have the observations from satellites, radars, everything. At the meteorological center, a warning is formulated, but then warning must reach the people who are likely to be affected. And mind you, already they are getting cyclonic weather in the sense of heavy rains, winds, which knock off the telephone poles, which play havoc with the electricity system. And so roads are full of water. If not already destroyed, then how do you reach the people? How do you reach the administrative headquarters who are to take action, who are to evacuate the people? For that, what has been designed is a very unique system, unique in the world, a truly Indian concept that is known as Disaster Warning Service, DWS. And it is also with the help of the INSAT that we are able to provide this service. What happens? Suppose the warning has been formulated at the Cyclone Warning Center, either at Chennai or at Calcutta or at Mumbai. These are the three main area cyclone warning centers of the Meteorological Department. Now from these very places, one is able to send a warning message to those particular area where the cyclone is likely to come. How do we do that? It is done very simply. There is a transmission from the Chennai center or Calcutta or Mumbai as the case may be, and then those areas of say Andhra Pradesh, coastal Andhra Pradesh, where we want to address, there are small equipment available just like a dish antenna of a cable TV person who provides the cable TV, and also a small little box with a receiver and a siren. So when somebody from the Chennai center makes the switch on and decides which particular districts or which particular village groups it has to reach, then those numbers are pressed, and only at those stations first the siren will go up. And once the siren is there, the person knows there that some message is coming, and then the message is given in the language of the area, say maybe Telugu, or maybe in Tamil, or maybe at the coastal areas, at the border of the two states, maybe it is repeated in Telugu as well as in Tamil. So the message goes in the local language, it reaches the people, because this type of things have been provided in the blocks, in the district magistrate's office, say panchayats, various places. About few hundred of these are available now on the east and west coast, and they are increasingly expanded. The network is being expanded. So this DWS is one of the, shall I say, the core of the warning system for the cyclone warning system, and it has been very much appreciated, has paid good dividends. At this stage, just let me say that India's responsibility for cyclone warning is for an area larger than the Indian territory. By international agreement under UN auspices, there are 3 centers in the northern hemisphere that take care of all the cyclone type of storms, that is the sea-based storms, call them cyclones, call them hurricanes, call them typhoons, all over the northern hemisphere. And these 3 centers are Miami in USA, New Delhi in India, and Tokyo in Japan. So, the New Delhi center issues the advisories. We don't issue warnings for other countries, we issue them advisories containing the cyclone information that we have got, because each country is a sovereign state. And those countries, these concerned agencies, those countries use these advisories to issue warnings or any other instructions to their people or their officials. So, cyclone, what I'm trying to say is, cyclone is one of the disasters which has a high predictability, for which there is a very established, time-tested system available in the country, and that is because of this type of system, what Dr. Vayunandan said, that there has been a gradual decrease in the number of casualties, number of deaths occurring definitely. Property, it is not so very clear because the large number of constructions and the value of property is going up. So property, the decrease is not that very significant probably, but in the number of deaths, definitely it is there.
It is found, and it is said, believed as well, that and almost the entire coast is vulnerable to cyclones. Still, when we are to be a little more specific, we find when we talk of the vulnerability with regard to the cyclones, that it is the settlements which are located in the low-lying coastal areas which have the direct impact of the cyclones. Coupled with it, we find that it is not only those low-lying coastal areas, but also the adjacent areas and the settlements therein, because cyclones, when we do talk of, coupled with the cyclones is the heavy rains, and maybe at times there are the floods. So there are the problems which do emanate from that end as well. So there is a vulnerability of the adjacent areas as well onto that. Then another thing which is there, to which you have referred to when you were talking of the disaster warning system or the disaster warning center and their operating mechanism, that the poor communication or the warning systems, these are most vulnerable onto that, because probably the first thing which is to be affected by a cyclone in that particular area is our communication network. When the communication network goes off, of course, you have talked of the inset and the other kind of the mechanisms which are in operation at Mumbai or Chennai or Calcutta. But all the more the reason is that the moment we talk of the damages which are there, direct as well as indirect, and we talk of the loss in the human lives, because the fishermen as a clan or as a group of people, they are the most affected onto it, because they have their roti rozi in that particular area where they go for the fish catching and so on. So this communication network, which is the most vulnerable to this cyclone system, probably it affects or it increases the dimension of the loss which is undergone on the basis of the cyclone. Then coupled with it is that we talk of the lightweight structures, older constructions and the poor quality masonry. We have not been able to spend the things in that direction whereby we are to have heavy structured construction and the good quality masonry and so on. So these are again the vulnerable elements which are involved thereupon are the factors which contribute to the vulnerability on account of the cyclone. Then the infrastructural elements are there, the fishing boats and the maritime industry which gets very heavily affected. Though, and we find it, like recently you were referring to this cyclones which had struck the state of Gujarat in the recent past, whereby the two industrial units itself, they got a very heavy amount of loss, the SR and the Reliance Group. Because every particular disaster, what I understand is that besides having the direct effect, it has tantamount amount of indirect effect which probably people are unable to gauge at that particular juncture. Because whenever any calamity strikes, we try to view it in the sense that whether everybody is fine at home, the injuries which are being inflicted and so on. The rest of the things are to be taken up at a little later stage. In India, though, we are now talking of these measures which are being taken up on count of warning and so on to reduce the impact of the disasters, but somehow we still are more concentrated on the relief measures. Instead of the preparedness things, we are more concentrated on the relief measures. So in keeping with these possible factors which contribute to the vulnerability, we find that there are physical damages and the other kind of the effects which are there. If you permit me, I would like to take a minute onto it to talk of it, that in the physical damages, we talk of the structural losses and the damage by wind force, flooding, storm, surge and the landslides which is there as a result of the cyclone. Then casualties and public health. It may be caused by the flying debris or it may be caused by the flooding. And the moment we talk of any disaster taking place, coupled with that particular hazard is the epidemic which is being faced by the people, and people have to pay a really heavy price for that. And then of course the contamination of the water supplies which may lead to the viral outbreak and the malaria and things like it. Along with that, the groundwater may be contaminated by the flood waters and so on. And then another thing which is being hit rather drastically, that is the crop and the food supplies. How to reach, where are the people which are trapped up over there, which needs good amount of coordination at the part of the various controlling agencies, maybe at the district level or at the block level or at the village level, a kind of constant interaction and interplay between the non-governmental organizations, the government functionaries, as well as the people, those who are there in the community and the social influencers and so on and so forth, which have to be taken up. And then another thing which is there is in the list of the physical damages is that is the communications and the logistics. Severe disruption is possible on count of this cyclones, because the winds and the speed and the velocity of the winds definitely bring down telephone lines, antennas and satellite discs. So transport again is curtailed onto it. So these are some of the aspects which probably need to be taken into consideration by the people, those who are managing the things at that particular end. See, if you take it in the sense that in keeping with the basic objectivity of developing and launching this program is to reach as many people as possible. Those include, the clientele includes not only the freshers or the non-governmental organizations, functionaries, but also the people from the concerned departments of the government, those who are virtually managing the things over there and administering it over. So in the light of the characteristics which you had very nicely summed up over here, and we take up the factors which contribute to the vulnerability and coupled with the typical adverse effects which are thereupon, what kind of mechanisms you feel need to be evolved, whereby besides having this disaster warning system or this cyclone warning systems which we have developed in the country, that we could go along with that?
We come across number of things while interacting with the people, whether it's a kind of relief measures or the role played by the government at the time of 1977. So few things which came up there was that at time, because we, as Professor Sani has rightly said, we have a 5,700 kilometers coastline where every time we had some kind of disaster. And this Andhra Pradesh is a part of that Bay of Bengal coastline, as Dr. Kulsestra also said that the survey or the research shows that many of the cyclones have come up from Bay of Bengal. So at times, if you take the average in the state like Andhra Pradesh or Orissa or up to that West Bengal, you find that at almost every year there is some sort of cyclone. So at one point of time, the one of the chief ministers of Andhra Pradesh has had an idea of saying that at least we take out all the villages which are away, vicinity of 10 kilometers from the coastline, so that at least we can save some kind of property or some kind of human lives. So that was the suggestion, because lot of relief was they were providing, but unfortunately because of the cyclone they are again washed off. Then again they come to relief work, again the cyclone comes again. So this all are coming, that way that shows, that kind of a problem. They said that all the villages has to be moved at least away from the sea coast, at least 10 kilometers in somewhere, away from that. So that was not acceptable. You know that how difficult for the entire villages to be taken out, and lot of problems, social or economic or political. But lately when we saw that in 1977 cyclone, where a lot of relief came from all the places, from all the NGOs, and a lot of NGOs also concentrated, and they have also invested a lot of money with people's participation or whatever may be the. But now when we see after this 1998, when we saw that entire thing which has been built up as a relief, almost they have collapsed. Even these cyclone shelters, because they say that because of that sea, nearing sea, there is some sea or that salt content, because they are also not in a proper shape, and people are, I mean, they don't have trust in those cyclones. If there is any cyclone, they go to the nearby temple. They have to hide, I mean, themselves. Then they going to cyclone shelters. And coming to the houses which they have built up, and they were not that planned, and they have to have some kind of line like that we were talking about when we are talking about earthquake, some kind of retrofitting. In same way, in cyclone situations also, that has to be built. That has not been taken care. So whatever thing has been channeled, it was not been properly channeled. Another thing Professor Sani was talking about the warning systems. One or other way, because some or other, one of the good thing is that it is coming up from the people who are living in the village, that they develop some kind of that kind of preparedness. Because of the way they hit by the cyclones, naturally they have their own kind of. Plus, now recently when we have seen that, I mean, this warning system is, I mean, now it is very effective, and they have a at least morning, evening, this kind of communication, some kind of announcement in TV or radio, particularly for the fishermen, for the agriculturist. When times of cyclone, they would be continued for a duration of 1 hour, I mean, between. So that way, warning system, I think it has improved. But apart from that, that kind of relief things, they are taken as some kind of a ad hoc type, where you cannot have a permanent, maybe I think this.
Actually, I think our discussion is again boiling down to one very important question, that is community preparedness. For every type of disaster, what we need to do is prepare the community for it. Like Dr. Sani mentioned, that what we've been following till now is a very reactive approach towards disaster, and Dr. Vayunandan also mentioned that relief measures are very ad hoc. We are not unable to sustain the efforts made by the government agencies, made by the community in an event of the disaster. So, despite the fact that we have evolved a very good disaster warning system in India, the vulnerability of the community still remains a very neglected point, in the sense that people are vulnerable, people are still not prepared, and telecommunication network still goes haywire in the event of cyclone. But casualties still, like Dr. Kulshrestha mentioned, have really decreased. But, you know, constant efforts will improve the situation in the future. Now, Dr. Kulshrestha, would you like to add on the preparedness measures?
Yes. In fact, I would like to evolve my presentation now based on the comments of Professor Sani, Dr. Vayunandan, and yourself. Let me start from the very beginning. You see, the vulnerability, Professor Sani talked. Now, let's see in this case of cyclone, what happens. Cyclones originate on the sea and strike the coast. That's a very basic thing. And what is on the coast? You see, traditionally, from the earliest history, the civilizations have grown on the coasts or river beds, river banks. Now, most of the big cities, and whether in the earlier history or now modern days, they are on the coastal areas. In our country, 4 of our main cities, 3 are on the coasts. So these are the places. So I think giving a suggestion that, well, 10, 20, 30, 40 kilometers don't have anything, this is impractical. It has not happened anywhere in the world. It will not happen here. And there are good reasons for that. Because the coastal areas, by the very virtue of these cyclones, which bring in a lot of rain, and then also some fertile, rich soil and that type of thing, which comes in the wake of the floods that emanate. These are very fertile areas. All the delta areas on the coast where the rivers, fall in the sea, these are fertile areas where there is a lot of, production and all that is there. So I think those are the areas. Now, coupled with such areas, naturally there will be large population there, large property investment there, and the cyclones coming, so the destruction will be more, definitely, than it would be probably in the internal parts of the country when the cyclone moves further inwards. So I think that is a solution which we can at least forget for the time being, that is just have those places desolate, nobody living there, no activity there. These are the places where ports are there. So the vulnerability is definitely there.
No, sir, if you kindly excuse me, I definitely go along with you, because I was just talking of it that these are the factors which contribute to the vulnerability. That is the areas which are just in the settlement of the cyclone hit aspects. Definitely, like any other disaster, if you agree with me, that let us try to identify the elements which are there at risk.
Exactly.
Because if we talk of elements which are involved there at the risk, whether it is cyclone or it is earthquake or it is the flood or the landslide and so on and so forth, the first thing which comes is that is the population, the amount of the people. You have very rightly said it, that the land which is there in that area, that is probably quite a fertile land, and we cannot do away with that particular thing. Maybe it was a populist measure on the part of one of the former chief ministers who say that let us move away from the coastal belt. That way probably we can't run away from or shy away from our living or the measures to be adopted with it. Other thing is that is the buildings and the civil engineering works which are there. Wherever there will be population, definitely these things are bound to be there. So again, those are included in the elements at risk which are there with regard to every disaster. Along with that is the economic activity which you have very kindly referred to. Public services, utilities and the infrastructures which are there. These are the elements at risk in a given particular area, whether we talk of cyclone or earthquake and so on. Would you kindly agree with me when we take into consideration, why should we not talk of or why should we not adhere more to the risk assessment and the hazard mapping? Maybe through the risk assessment and the hazard mapping, we could definitely not completely eliminate, but we can definitely reduce the amount of the effect, negative effect of that on the populace as well as the area.
You are very right, Professor Sani. I mean, these are the basic tools in case of disaster mitigation. But in the particular case of cyclones, let us see why the problem arises.
Yeah.
Now, when a cyclone comes, what happens? There are three things that lead to all the problems. That is, one is the heavy rain, the second is the heavy winds, and the third is the storm surge, what we call, that is the water coming from the sea. When the cyclone comes and approaches the coast, because of the wind, the seawater piles up, so to say, on the coast. And once the cyclone hits and crosses the coast, it also crosses the coast. The saline water, highly saline water that comes. And if, God forbid, the cyclone is hitting the coast at a time when the natural tide is at a high tide level, then this storm surge, which can sometimes be 30 or 50 feet high wall, an enormous amount of water comes on this side. So the damage is done because of the heavy rain. The buildings are first soaked, then buffeted with strong winds. The storm surge comes, which floods everything, and apart from all the rain that is falling from the skies, that also creates the flood. Now, these are the three things. So, based on these three impacts of a cyclone, the risk assessment of the particular community has got to be made, and on that basis, what are the economic activities? Is there a port there? Is there a defense navy establishment there? Are there multi-story buildings? Are there a lot of crop there? So this has to be done. I mean, these are basic tools, and I agree with you that that is the basic tool on the basis of which the vulnerability assessment, or call it risk assessment, has to be made, and then the action has to be taken, and action plan has to be worked.
Sir, along with this risk assessment and hazard mapping, cannot we also take up the land use control and the floodplain management as well? Maybe that can again contribute towards the possible risk reduction measures so far as the cyclone is concerned?
From whatever little I know, Professor Sani, I think floodplain management is not very much applicable in this case, because the problem is that the water that comes, the storm surge, that doesn't flow out so easily as it does in case of a flood in a river, for example, in the floodplain. So here that problem is a little more complicated.
So along with this, we have referred to this land use control and this risk assessment and the hazard mapping. If we feel that this improvement of vegetation cover, and then of course along with that the reduction of the structural vulnerability, since you were talking of the naval settlements over there and some kind of the other things which have come up along with the coastal line, maybe these can again reduce the risk which is there involved in that particular belt or along with the coastal so far as the cyclones are concerned. Now, if we take up our discussion a little further, the thing which was being talked over by Dr. Vayunandan and Alka had taken it up with regard to this preparedness measures. The one which you have very nicely put up is that is this warning system. But of course, then again, there are ways whereby one could improve the warning system. Maybe some kind of the things which are being taken up at the higher levels, and some things which need to be taken up. The proper kind of the training to be given to the people, those who are virtually manning the things at the brass tacks. And then along with that is the evacuation plans. And third thing is, which is very important, that is training and community preparation or participation, which needs to be there upon, which can definitely reduce the adversity of the calamity which has struck in that particular thing. If you agree on to these things, or maybe you have something else to add on to it.
See, as far as the action, say what action is to be taken, that depends on the particular activity. For example, take the naval ships or the merchant navy or the navy or whatever is there, defense. The best thing for them is, because the cyclone track is fairly well kept under surveillance, and one knows is just to go out on the seas and the high seas and be away from that. That is, leave the port and go out. Same thing is done. Say, for example, there is an aircraft installation there, airport installation. Fly the aircraft and go to the next airport, which is maybe 50 or 100 miles away and 100 kilometers away, and one is safe. It is a question of evacuating the people. The evacuation has to be done, which is a hard job. The district administrations have been doing an excellent job of it, but they do it. The NGOs move in there. Standing crops, fisheries, hatcheries, and that type of things. Shelters are provided. Cyclone shelters Dr. Vayunandan referred to. Now what happens is, it's not at the same place a cyclone strikes year after year after year. So when in between there are a couple of years or a few years when the cyclone shelter is not in use, either it gets into disuse, is used for certain other purposes or something. So the key to success lies in being always prepared and sort of having a drill type of thing available, whether the things are in correct shape or not, whether the stocks are available. You spoke of the contamination of water, food, which is a very common thing in the wake of a cyclone. The food is being provided, even that is healthy. You see the epidemics, public health, and that type of thing, medicines, whether they are available. And I think when all is said and done, a good thing. I mean, in case of cyclone, fairly good arrangement exists and it is being done. But I think in such cases, eternal vigilance is that is what is required.
So that means, if we move little further onto it, that the specified or the typical kind of the post-disaster needs in case of the cyclone is, first thing which you have talked of is, that is this shelters. Whether it is the cyclone shelter or we call it as the emergency shelter, and along with that another important thing is the evacuation, which is very important, and with the role being played by the district administration coupled with the NGOs, and also at times one finds that within the community also there are a number of people, those who are willing to help onto it. Coupled with that shelter is the search and the rescue, medical assistance, water purification, re-establish logistical and communication networks, and most important thing, I think, Dr. Kulshrestha, you would kindly agree with me on to this, is that is this disaster assessment, that how to do that. Already that one of the tools which is available with us is, that is the damage assessment forms which we make use of. Coupled with that is the aerial survey, in order to see that what is the severity of a particular cyclone having hit in a particular area, whereby we are able to know about the losses which have been caused, and then find out the ways how to do away with it or how to cope with the challenges which have come up before us.
I think these exercises are regularly done in the concerned agencies.
Correct.
And that is how it's updated. One learns from every cyclone situation.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.